Welcome back into the Daily Dose. I'm Jeff Hansen. The show's brought to you by Give'emHellBrigham.com. If you've never checked us out over at Give'emHellBrigham.com or GEHB.co, go check us out. Sign up for our newsletter. Get multiple long-form newsletters delivered into your email inbox every day, and get access to our Discord server where we have hundreds, I think maybe over 1,000 BYU fans subscribed, interacting, where there is BYU conversation going all the time. It's a great place, and it's a community. We do a lot of really cool things over there. We're getting ready to roll out a scholarship. We do some charity things. There's a lot of cool stuff that happens over at Give'emHellBrigham.com. We're more than just the Daily Dose. We're more than just this YouTube channel. It's a lot of fun. Check us out. I appreciate your support of us here at this YouTube channel. We're cruising towards 3,000 subscribers. That's fantastic. That's our goal. Please help us get there. Please steal the phone of your kids, of your parents, of the neighbors across the street. Don't do any financial crimes or anything like that when you have their phones. Just open up their YouTube app, subscribe to the Daily Dose. You're enhancing their lives, and you're helping fuel the algorithm for us here. Appreciate you guys a ton. Wow. Well, what a day yesterday was in the college football world. Colorado, it's not done, but it seems done that Colorado is moving from the Pac-12 conference to the Big 12. It seemed done before, right? BYU fans, we know this. There have been plenty of times and multiple occasions over the last 12 years where expansion news seemed done only for it not to be done. The difference is that this was not journalists talking about what they think will happen. This is not talking about journalists saying what will make or what would make sense. And over the next few weeks or month, this could happen. We think this is going to, this wasn't that. This is journalists and the most reputable journalists in the country saying Colorado is moving to the Big 12 conference. It will be official in the next 48 hours. Could things change? Of course they could. That's what we've learned with realignment and expansion. Things can always change, but this feels about as sure as any expansion news we've seen since expansion and realignment really kicked off in 2010. So Colorado is moving to the Big 12. I've been inundated with questions from BYU fans asking what this means for BYU, or does this mean anything for BYU? So let's take a minute. I just want to talk through some of those questions. Some of these shows I have a little bit more of an agenda of exactly what I want to talk about. I want to kind of offer my raw, my unfiltered opinions on what this means for BYU. I've got a handful of questions that I've been asked, but really this is just a brain dump for me of what I think is going to happen, but from a BYU perspective. First, and I've been asked a ton over the last week, if the Pac-12 is shaky and if teams start to leave, which now they are, if that happens, what does that mean for BYU's recruiting efforts? Can they swoop in and steal some of these guys? The short answer is yes. I mean, if that happens, then yeah, they're going to have the opportunity to do that. But if we break it down a little bit more, generally speaking, high school players, recruits, they don't care as much about this stuff as diehard football fans. They're not sitting on pins and needles waiting for news on the Pac-12 media deal. That's just not how they work. That's not what they care about. They care about the coaches. They care about the NFL. They care about the relationships. They care about the college campus. They don't care about the TV deal. Now, there's obviously going to be effects that impact the recruiting world over time. If the Pac-12 falls apart, then yeah, that's a seismic shift for these recruits that they have to consider. But generally speaking, and you're going to be able to find anecdotal examples of players who are exceptions to this statement, but generally speaking, players in high school aren't going to react to something until something is done. That's just kind of the way that it works. So can BYU have a benefit from this? Yeah, they absolutely can. I don't think that we're at the point yet where BYU would recognize that benefit. If the Pac-12, they add, San Diego State, they stabilize themselves a little bit, get a TV deal, it probably is a non-factor in the short term of recruiting, and it becomes a factor in the long term of recruiting. And that could still happen. I mean, remember, it wasn't that long ago that Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12 to go to the SEC, and everybody proclaimed that the Big 12 was dead. only for the conference to add BYU, UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati, stabilize themselves, and they're okay now, right? So things can change. So yeah, BYU could impact or could receive a benefit on the recruiting trail in the future, but I don't think we're at that point yet. The next thing is what happens next, and what does BYU do? Nothing. I mean, that question's been asked to me a few times, and it's kind of a head scratcher for me. BYU doesn't have to do anything, and that's the benefit. BYU gets to hang out and know that they have a conference home, and that's an awesome place to be in. That's a place that BYU's never been in. That, hey, realignment's going to happen. People are worried about their futures. People are unsure of money and blah blah blah. BYU doesn't have to worry about that. BYU's not in the SEC. They're not in the Big Ten. They're not going to have the most money, but they know what they're getting. They know where they're going. They know who they're doing it with. That's huge for the Cougars. They can finally rest and just focus on themselves, focus on their conference, and focus on what the future looks like in terms of on-the-field production, winning, coaching, all that good stuff. BYU doesn't have to do anything. We have talked about this because I guess the transition into the next thing is what's next for the Big 12 and what's next for BYU's place in the Big 12. We've talked a lot about this, really in the early days of the Daily Dose. The Big 12 has kind of the weirdest benefit of all of the Power 5 conferences right now. It doesn't feel like it's a win. It doesn't feel like this is a good thing, but it is. They've been rated. The schools who were going to bounce from the Big 12 conference have bounced. Missouri's gone. Nebraska's gone. Colorado's gone and now coming back. Texas A&M is gone. Texas is gone. Oklahoma's gone. The brands that other conferences are trying to pick away from the Big 12, they're gone. And the Big 12 has survived. And because the brands that are left aren't the brands that are going to get pillaged at this point, they can focus on working together and building their conference future. And that's something that the ACC and that the Pac-12 cannot say right now. The Pac-12 has 9 remaining schools, assuming this Colorado thing happens. Even if they add San Diego State and get to 10, and let's say, just for funsies, come up with 2 more names, SMU and Fresno get added and they get to 12. Washington's still leaving if the Big 10 calls immediately. And there's still going to be rumors about Washington and Oregon going to the Big 10. Arizona State, Utah, they're not going to be able to run away from rumors of the Big 12 offering them membership. So no matter what the Pac-12 does, there's still going to be ongoing rumors of expansion, of the conference falling apart. And that puts George Kliavkoff at such a disadvantage in an environment where he was already struggling to get a media rights deal. Now he's really going to struggle to get a media rights deal because of the fractures in the foundation of his conference. The Big 12 doesn't have those fractures. And for BYU, they can just focus on being BYU. They don't have to focus on being prepared to be nimble and to be fluid and to find their new footing in college football. They know where they're at. The ACC, it's a similar situation as the Pac-12. Now, it's not falling apart right now, but we've all heard the grumblings from Miami and Florida State and Clemson. They want more money. We've already heard that, hey, the SEC would happily take a few of those schools. We've heard the Big Ten would happily look to pair some of those ACC schools with Notre Dame and expand their conference. So there's still going to be a lot of rumors about the future of those ACC schools, the same way there are about the future of the Pac-12 schools. So those two conferences, those commissioners are going to try to make things work as a collective body, but that's going to be really difficult for them to do. BYU, the Big 12, they don't have to worry about that. The brands that were going to be poached have been poached, and now this conference is together and they can focus on who they are and what they want to be when they grow up, and they are working hand in hand. That's a huge advantage, I think, going forward for the Big 12 conference and for BYU. So what does BYU have to do? They don't have to do anything. They just have to focus on winning football games, and going into this 2023 season, that's going to be enormous because we're not running away from these stories, right? Think about timelines. People have wanted to say that, well, the realignment news is probably going to die. There's a window. We even heard that from Tom Homo and Brett Yormark at Big 12 Media Days. And that's true, but windows can be opened again. And if it's the right move for conferences, they will open them again. We're not late. People think that Colorado left late. They haven't left late. USC, UCLA, they left on July 1st. Texas and Oklahoma, they left on July 13th. So Colorado is just right in the normal I guess, normal time frame of when teams are leaving conferences. BYU, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati, they got their invites and made their official announcements the second week of September after the season had started. So there's no timeline that says, hey, the news is going to die when fall camp opens up next week. That's just not what history has proven to be accurate. This is going to be a storyline into the season. And until we get some finality with what teams are going to do, until there's a media rights deal for the Pac-12, until Arizona or Oregon or Washington or Utah or whomever leaves the conference and finds their new solidified home, they're going to be talking about this. They're not going to be able to run away from it. BYU doesn't have to worry about any of that stuff. They get to focus on football and focus on trying to win a conference championship. That is huge for BYU. It's a crazy time in college football for the first time in 12 years, 13 years. And really, if you want to go the extended history, the first time since Lavelle took over at BYU, the Cougars are on the right side of the crazy time, and they kind of get to be a spectator, and that feels really good for any BYU fan. Appreciate you tuning in to the Daily Dose. As always, subscribe, like the video, fuel the algorithm. Until next time, give them hell.